The story begins by the lake, as our hero finds the surroundings unfamiliar. He suddenly remembers he was driving along on his scooter when a vending machine ahead of him got loose, and it ends up smashing into him. He is surprised he is still alive, but he soon finds he is unable to move. He suddenly hears his voice, welcoming customers to use him, and he realizes he has been reincarnated as a vending machine. We learn he was actually a vending machine fanatic, so he is surprisingly happy about his new form. He admires his affordable products and sleek design, but he soon realizes his new form might be a problem. He wonders if it was thanks to God that he was turned into the thing he loved, and he decides to just accept things. He is able to say the standard things for a vending machine, such as insert a coin, and thanks for buying. He thinks about what else he can do, trying to understand his new body. He sees some writing, and he realizes it's the items he is selling. There are currently only 2 items, mineral water and corn soup. He hears a voice telling him that he can change the items by spending points, and he sees he has 1,000 points. He learns that points are converted for money, which are then used to replenish or change the goods sold, or even gain additional functions. After further investigation, he learns that the points allow him to keep different items at different temperatures, and he is also able to warm up frozen food. He checks out what other items he has, and he finds he has a range of items that he would buy from vending machines when he was alive. He decides to try changing his item to milk tea, so he spends 10 points, and the milk teas appear inside him. It seems he can gain 1 point per 100 yen, and as he learns more about himself, he finds he doesn't require electricity for power, but he consumes his points for power instead. He uses 1 point per hour, which means he uses 24 points per day. Since he still has 990 points, he can operate for about a month, but he thinks he shouldn't waste his points until he can get a more steady income. But he realizes he is in the middle of nowhere, and after a day, he starts to panic, thinking he is doomed, because no one will ever use him. However, at that moment, a giant frog appears. It approaches him, but it gets startled by his voice welcoming it. The frog starts attacking him with its club, and his durability gets lowered. He learns that if his durability reaches 0, he will break and become unusable. The frog keeps on attacking him, and he sees his durability rapidly decreasing. He notices there is a magic stat, so he is surprised there is magic in this world. He is able to repair his durability with his points, so he thinks he can just wait for the frog to get bored, but the frog suddenly calls its friends. Seeing the frog's axe, he starts to panic, and he tries to find a function that will save him, but there is nothing useful. The frogs keep beating him up, but he suddenly notices he can gain a blessing from God. He is able to choose from a number of different abilities, so he gains the barrier ability, and he is able to push the frogs away. He thinks he is invincible, but his points start decreasing rapidly as the frogs keep on attacking him. The frogs eventually get bored, and he manages to survive. He uses his points to repair his durability, and we see he is down to 311 points. A few days later, he still hasn't been able to sell anything, but a girl suddenly appears. She is on alert at first, but she notes how she is starving, saying she isn't cut out to be a hunter. It seems she was hunting the frogs, but she hasn't had any luck. She notices the vending machine, but she is unfamiliar with what it can do. She is startled when she hears his voice, welcoming her and telling her to insert a coin. The girl wonders what kind of coins it takes. She tries a copper coin, but it's not accepted, and he learns he needs to acquire the coin conversion function to accept it. He quickly learns the skill for 100 points, and his prices change, allowing the girl to realize it will cost her 1 silver coin. She thinks it's expensive, but she decides to try it anyway because she is starving. He becomes excited to finally have his first sale, and the girl chooses his soup item. She takes it out from him, and she is surprised it is still hot. She tastes the soup, and she finds it delicious, saying it's better than anything else that's around. He is overwhelmed with pleasure to bring her such joy, and the girl wonders what other items he has. She enjoys his milk tea as well, and she ends up buying a few more corn soups. So he ended up making about 6 silver coins, which converts to 60 points. The girl ends up falling asleep beside him, but he protects her with his barrier, seeing her as a precious customer. When the girl wakes up, she thanks him for all the food, and she is startled when she hears his voice. She wonders if he is able to talk, because she knows someone who invents tools that have magical power, so she wonders if he can only say certain lines. She notices he can understand her, and they come up with a way to talk, where he will say hello to answer yes, and thank you to answer no. She introduces herself as Llamas, and she starts trying to learn more about him. He can't tell her his name, so she decides to call him Boxo. She wonders if he is lonely, and she suggests moving him. He agrees to this, and the girl suddenly picks him up. He can't believe she is so strong, but he is glad to finally move. It turns out Llamas has the blessing of might, which explains her insane strength. She takes a break after a while, wanting to have some more corn soup, but he thinks the soup isn't very filling, so he decides to find her something else. Llamas is surprised seeing he can change his items, and she decides to try it out. It's a can of potato chips, and she finds it absolutely delicious, eating multiple cans, and he manages to recover back up to 320 points. They make it back to the village, and the guards wonder what she has brought back. She explains it as a magical tool that can grant items in exchange for money, saying she found it by the lake. She wonders if it's okay to keep, and the guards mention it's normal for whoever finds something in a dungeon to become its rightful owner, and Boxo wonders if they are in a dungeon, but thinks it's not possible because he is able to see the sky. The guards are surprised he can talk, so they think he could be sold for a high price, but Llamas says she is taking him to meet her friend. The guards try buying from him, and they are instantly impressed, going on to try all of his items. They tell Llamas to bring him around once in a while, and Boxo thinks business is looking up. They get inside the village, and Llamas notices a girl being bullied. She beats up one of the thugs, but we see that despite her strength, she struggles to land a hit on the men. The men decide to run away, and Llamas checks up on the girl. Llamas goes to the inn, and her friend Monami rushes to her, glad that she returned unharmed. It seems Llamas was left behind by some other hunters, but Monami tells her she has helped her spread bad rumors about them. She turns her attention to Boxo, and she thinks Llamas has brought back more junk, but Llamas claims he is super useful. As Llamas sets him up outside, Monami knows she wants to go to the surface to show Boxo off to her friend, but Monami wonders how she will pay for the transfer circle. Despite being able to see the sky, they are apparently in a dungeon called the Clearflow Lake. It seems a transfer circle is required to leave, but it seems Llamas has spent all her money on his items. Monami tells Llamas to make some money working at her inn, and she hopes Boxo will also help to attract customers. The people are soon attracted by how good his items are, and he is able to sell quite a lot. At night, Llamas takes him over to the guards at the gate, but they eventually get bored of his items, so he thinks it's time he added some new items. It seems he has been able to sell over 400 items, and he now has over 3,000 points. He suddenly glows, and the guard is surprised to see there is a new item. It costs 3 silver coins, but the guard is excited to try something new. They wonder how to eat it, but there are luckily instructions on the can. It turns out to be stew, and the guards are impressed by the delicious flavors, wanting to buy even more. After a few days, word about his new item spreads around the village, and it seems to be a big hit. But during the day he makes it unavailable, so he doesn't compete with the inn's restaurant business. The girl that Llamas saved approaches him, but she gets startled by his voice, so she throws a rock at him and runs away. Their days continue, as Llamas takes him over to the guards at night. She talks to him as they walk, and she hopes they can talk for real one day, which is why they need to get to her friend on the surface. Llamas is glad to have found him, and he thinks that being reincarnated as a vending machine isn't so bad. The next day, Boxo is terrified when he finds himself confronted by a bear, but the bear actually turns out to be the director of the Hunters Association. He is impressed seeing Boxo, and he is there to ask for their help. He mentions that they are planning to attack the base of the frog monsters, and he wants them to come along. Llamas wonders why he wants to bring Boxo since he can't fight, but the director says his ability to provide warm and ready-to-eat food on the go would be invaluable for the hunters, and he promises to keep them safe. Llamas isn't too sure, but Boxo thinks if they ignore the frog monsters, it might end up being dangerous for the village, so he agrees to go. They head off 3 days later, and we learn that it seems to be breeding season for the frogs, so there are an abnormally high number of them, and according to the director, they are making sure to protect the transfer circle in their village, because it's the key to getting in and out of the dungeon. Besides the hunters from the village, there are also a group of hunters known as the Misfits, who are joining in on this raid, excited to make some money. The hunters take a break, and Llama sets Boxo down. She is approached by one of the hunters, who tells her not to be so worried, because they are there to protect them. He is interested seeing Boxo, and Llamas explains how to use him. The man decides to try it out, picking out a lemon tea, and he is impressed by the packaging. The man tries the drink, and he finds it delicious. He wonders where it all comes from, but Llamas mentions Boxo seems to just refill himself. The man becomes even more interested, so he calls over his vice captain Filmina. She addresses him as Captain Kelroy, and Boxo is surprised to learn that he was the boss. Kelroy calls Filmina an expert about magic tools, so he asks her if she knows anything more about Boxo. She takes a look at him, but she ends up sensing no magic power from him, saying he just seems like a block of iron. Kelroy mentions how he magically seems to refill himself, thinking the items could be coming from another dimension, and Filmina suggests it could be the power of a blessing, but she finds it unlikely. Kelroy thinks it's a mystery, but decides to just be thankful to have him there. The director tells them they are camping for the night, and Boxo thinks it's his time to shine. Everyone lines up to buy from him, and we see he has added cup noodles for this expedition. Everyone finds it delicious, and Boxo takes note of a girl that seems to have a big appetite. Llamas gets to know her, and she introduces herself as Sui. Later at night, the director joins them, and he tells Llamas the frog den is about 3 hours away. He gives her the choice to either stay at the camp, or join the hunters on the battlefield. Llamas is okay with going since she is a hunter herself, but she worries about Boxo. However, Boxo says he doesn't mind, so they agree to join the battle as well. The next day, they reach the frog base, but there is a thick mist, and they are walking through mud. The director tells them to attack, and we see the hunters taking out the frogs. Kelroy tells his team they will get paid extra the more they kill, so they get fired up. Llamas wants to do her best, but Boxo worries for her, because she has trouble landing her hits. A frog suddenly jumps at her, but she easily blows it away. She is surprised she landed a hit, and it seems having Boxo on her back is giving her better balance. We see the Misfits team taking out the frogs, and Filmina uses water magic to take out 3 at once. But even more frogs appear, and Kelroy finds it strange that there are so many. We see they are surrounded, and Boxo starts to get worried. The frogs charge at them, and Sui protects Llamas. But there is suddenly a frog that lunges for Sui. Llamas prepares to protect her, but Boxo's barrier blows the frog away. The girls are confused seeing the barrier, wondering what's going on, but Boxo is glad he protected them. He buys a new ability for 1,000 points to help expand his field of view. Llamas tells him to watch her back, and Kelroy compliments her on her strength. Llamas blushes hearing this, and Boxo warns her they are being attacked, but she is too distracted to hear him, so he ends up using his barrier again to blow them away. Kelroy is surprised seeing the barrier, and Llamas claims it must be Boxo's power, which makes Kelroy even more interested in him, but Boxo feels he might be dangerous. They end up beating all the frogs, and Kelroy tells his team to cut their tongues so they can get paid by the association. Filmina tells him to help, saying it's gross, but Kelroy claims he became the captain so he wouldn't need to deal with that, causing his team to call him a tyrant. They wonder what they should do next, and Kelroy suggests they could help out on the front lines. Filmina reminds him their job is to protect Llamas and Boxo. Kelroy wants to make more money, saying he can give them all a bonus, and Filmina suggests it's up to Llamas. Kelroy begs Llamas to go, and Llamas is happy to help the hunters on the front lines. They take out some more frogs, and there are a bunch of hunters that are injured. Llamas carries them to the wagon, and Boxo thinks about how he can help. He comes up with an idea, and he decides to give them some drinks for free. The hunters are glad to have him, and the director thanks Kelroy for coming to their rescue. The director notes that there were twice as many frogs as expected, and Llamas wonders how it's possible. The director thinks it must mean that the Frog King has arisen, and Boxo imagines how strong it could be. The director asks for Kelroy's help to defeat it, and he tells Llamas to stay behind to help treat and feed the wounded hunters. Later that night, Llamas gets called away to help some of the other hunters, but there is a shady man that approaches Boxo. Boxo realizes he is after his money, so he gives him a free drink. But as the man tries to grab it, he burns the man's hand with a hot soup. Boxo laughs at him, but the man prepares to bust him open. However, Llamas returns just in time, and she ends up knocking him out, and the man is restrained. There is a disturbance in the distance, and the Frog King suddenly appears. The hunters wonder why it's there, and they all start to panic. Llamas loads Boxo on the wagon, but the pigs are too scared to move. Llamas ends up letting them go, and the hunters wonder what she is doing. But she ends up trying to pull the wagon with her strength. Boxo wonders what he should do, thinking his barrier isn't enough to save everyone. He tries to think of a way to slow down the monster, looking through his item list for ideas. He ends up buying Coke, and Llamas thinks he has a plan. They grab the Coke, and he buys the form change function, turning himself into a candy machine. He is filled with Mentos, and Llamas wonders what she needs to do. He struggles to explain his plan since he can't talk properly, so he just keeps telling her to insert coin. She doesn't understand what he is trying to tell her, and the Frog King approaches. The hunter thinks he must be broken, but Llamas can tell Boxo is trying his best. There's nothing Boxo can do, but the thief suddenly wakes up, seeing the Frog King, and he demands to be freed, not wanting to die. But a hunter stuffs his mouth to shut him up, but he starts to choke, so they give him some of the Coke, causing him to explode. This gives Llamas an idea, and she figures out Boxo's plan. She explains it to the other hunters, and they end up using the Coke to blast the frog in its eyes. Kelroy and the director make it back in time, and they manage to take out the Frog King. They all celebrate, and the director apologizes to Llamas for putting her in danger, and he thanks Boxo for saving them all, telling them their mission is complete. As they head back, they suddenly notice that the village was attacked. Llamas rushes back to the inn, but it's been completely destroyed, and she worries about Manami. However, Boxo manages to calm her down, and Llamas thinks Manami could have evacuated to the Hunters Association. We see a giant double-headed snake, which was responsible for all the damage, and Llamas finds the two guards. She asks about Manami and her mother, and the guards tell her they are safe inside. We see that the building is well guarded, because it's where the transfer circle is located. Manami welcomes Llamas back, and they are happy everyone is safe. Boxo thinks about helping the people, and he decides to give them all free items for the day. At night, we learn that the snake is normally the natural enemy of the frog monsters, and Boxo is surprised to see the villagers cooking it up for food. There's a huge line since he's giving away free items, and it even helps attract some new faces. He thinks it will make him even more money in the long run, and we see he has even started selling alcohol. Llamas gets a bit drunk, happy that everything turned out well. She is also happy seeing everyone gathered around him, and she thinks he has become an integral part of their lives. The next day, the people start the repairs, and Boxo is set up at the association, where there are plenty of people around. Llamas visits him, mentioning that the director gave her a personal request, and it's to help with removing the rubble. She takes Boxo over to the inn, and she starts moving the rocks, easily smashing them into pieces. Her cart gets full, and she prepares to take it to the dump, but Kelroy suddenly appears. He offers to treat everyone to some of Boxo's items. Llamas gets excited, and Kelroy tries to recruit her to his team, along with Boxo, but she instantly refuses. Kelroy walks off rejected, and Llamas says she's too busy with helping rebuild the inn. The next day, Boxo is visited by a woman and her assistant. Llamas wonders who they are, and the woman introduces herself as Akawi from the exchange house. She mentions they are there because it seems the village is low on silver coins. Llamas thinks it must be because Boxo only takes silver coins, and he can't believe she ratted him out. Akawi proposes exchanging for her gold coins, but Boxo isn't able to do it since he doesn't have an exchange function. Llamas suggests they could just buy something with a gold coin, and they will be able to get the silver coins as change. They end up with a whole chest full of silver coins, but the thief sees their exchange. Later on, we see an old man in front of Boxo, and we see he has added a lottery function. The man is devastated when he loses, wanting to spin again, but he ends up getting dragged off by his wife. The young girl Sayori visits with a bunch of rocks to cause trouble, but she drops them all when she is startled by his voice, and she gets carried off by some men. As she approaches again the next day, she is disappointed that her father is away. Boxo can tell she is feeling down, so he gives her a free juice, and she thanks him. At night, Boxo gets set up at the bathhouse, and we see that he also sells hygiene products like shampoo. And he seems to be a big hit with the furry creatures. The next day, the old man is back, and this time with his granddaughter. He teaches her about the lottery function, and the girl is excited to try. She actually ends up winning, and her grandfather can't believe it. She gets an item for free, but she ends up just giving it to her grandfather to make him happy, saying she had a great time with him, and it seems Boxo rigged it for her. The next day, the director approaches Boxo. He heard that Boxo now has the ability to disguise himself, so he asks him to hide out where a bunch of crimes have been taking place, so he can help identify the culprit. He ends up being set up, right outside the front of the association. Llamas wonders where he has gone, but Monami reminds her the director was borrowing him, so Llamas continues to help around the association. Boxo has a quiet day, but we see Sayori looking around for him. She runs into Llamas, and she wonders if she has given any more thought to her proposal. However, Llamas says she's not going to sell Boxo. Sayori says she would have enough money for the rest of her life, but Llamas refuses, saying Boxo is irreplaceable. Sayori wonders what Boxo truly is, but even Llamas isn't sure. She thinks that since he can understand and respond to everything, she sees him the same as another person, and Boxo is happy to hear she feels this way. Sayori declares she will get Boxo one way or another, but she leaves for the day, telling Llamas to take care of him until that day comes. Boxo reappears, and Llamas is shocked to see him, but she tells him she missed him, and she is excited to tell him about her day. The next day, we see Boxo as he gets wheeled around on a cart, but it turns out he has actually been kidnapped, and he wonders where he's being taken. A few hours earlier, we see Boxo getting approached by a group of men. They tell him they were hired by the director to help reinforce the walls, so they tell him the director wants him to go with them so he can help feed the workers. Boxo notices the shady guy that tried to steal from him, but he thinks he must be reformed since he's working for the director. He agrees to go with them, so the men load him onto their cart, but after 8 hours, he comes to the realization of what's really going on. He wonders how far they are going, and they eventually stop to have a break. While they are stopped, Boxo takes the chance to use his security camera to take photos of all of their faces. He's approached by the thief, and the man threatens him to give them food. Boxo refuses, so the man stabs him, causing him to take some damage. But the boss reprimands the thief, telling him not to damage the merchandise. The boss tells Boxo to hand over all his money, but Boxo refuses. They know Boxo is able to repair himself, so the boss tells his men to rough him up. The men start bashing into him, and although the damage isn't a lot, he wonders if there's anything he can do about it. He gets a notification that he can enhance his toughness by spending 1,000 points, and it instantly makes him tougher, reducing the damage from the attacks to 0. The boss notices that Boxo doesn't seem to be repairing, getting worried they may have broken him, but the thief assures him it's fine. Boxo gives them some drinks, and the man is relieved he is still working. They all try out the drink, but it turns out to be disgusting, because it was Boxo's lowest rated drink. They reach their base at night, and Boxo gets taken inside. They tell a woman to take a look at him, but they get scared as she approaches, so they just throw her the instructions and quickly run away. The woman starts talking to Boxo, and he wonders if he should answer honestly. The woman introduces herself as Hulami, and Boxo recognizes her as Llamas' friend. She's actually a magic item engineer, and it turns out she was also kidnapped. Boxo starts talking to her, and she is instantly impressed to see a magic item that can understand and speak with people. She reads the instructions, and she soon figures out how he can communicate. Hulami reveals she has experimented with trying to give magic items human intelligence, but concluded it's not possible with their technology, so she started thinking about putting a human soul into an item instead. Boxo is amazed she figured it out, and Hulami says she needs a drink from all her excitement. Boxo gives her one of his milk teas, and she finds it delicious. They keep on talking, and Boxo confirms he actually has a human soul and has memories of his past. Hulami wonders why he requires money, because normal magic items don't require any. Boxo decides to show her, transforming into his other form, and Hulami realizes he must use the money to gain additional functions. She wonders what else he can do, so he shows her his barrier skill. She thinks it's some kind of wall, but Boxo lets her pass through, and Hulami is amazed he can even use a blessing. but Boxo is impressed she is working everything out so quickly. Hulami goes to sleep, and Boxo wonders if the people in the village have noticed that he's missing. At that moment, the bandits return, wanting to get payback on Hulami for scaring them, but Boxo suddenly transforms, turning into a magazine dispenser, and he instantly attracts the men. The men become too distracted, and they all decide to head back to their rooms, saying they have business to take care of. The next day, a man comes in to give Hulami her food. Hulami is disappointed seeing a single loaf of bread, so Boxo decides to give her some of his food. He treats her to all kinds of different foods, and she thinks he is even better than a restaurant. Hulami is completely stuffed, but the boss enters, wanting to know what she has figured out. Hulami doesn't want to cooperate, but the boss tells her she has 2 days to figure out how to get Boxo's money, so Boxo thinks they need to find a way to escape before then. Hulami continues on with examining him, and their time is running out. Boxo thinks about making a distraction to give Hulami a chance to get away, but Hulami has a serious talk with him, telling him not to think about sacrificing himself, because the area is surrounded by monsters, so even if she got away, she wouldn't be able to survive. She gets tired, so she calls it for the night, but Boxo wonders what to do about their deadline. During the night, there is suddenly a commotion outside, so he quickly wakes Hulami up. They realize there's a fight going on outside, and they suddenly hear Llamas's voice. We see the fight outside, and Llamas calls for Boxo, charging into the building. Hulami is surprised that Boxo is friends with Llamas, and she thinks they should be fine to just wait to be rescued. But Hulami suddenly thinks they could be in trouble, because besides storing all their gold here, the bandits also have explosives. Boxo worries hearing this, and some of the explosives go off, causing the ceiling to come crashing down, but Boxo protects them with his barrier. Hulami wonders if he can hold the barrier forever, but he admits that he can't. He thinks he would survive being crushed since he upgraded his toughness, but he worries for Hulami. Hulami realizes that his ability must use money, so she points out the bandit's stash of gold. Boxo lets it through his barrier, and he jacks up the prices on all his items, while Hulami deposits all of the money into him. Boxo gains an insane number of points, and he thinks he'll be able to hold out until Llamas saves them, but Hulami suddenly collapses. Boxo realizes she can't breathe, because his barrier also stops air from getting in. He thinks about what he can do, and he suddenly transforms, turning into an oxygen vending machine. Hulami is able to breathe, and Boxo is glad he was a vending machine fanatic in his past, knowing that in 1965, there were oxygen vending machines because there were concerns about air pollution. Hulami thinks she would fall for him if he were a man, and even Boxo is charmed by her. Llamas makes it to them, and she is overjoyed to finally find him. She slips through the barrier, crashing into him, but she cries thinking she had lost him. She hugs onto him, apologizing for not watching him, and he is glad to be reunited with her as well. Llamas eventually realizes Hulami is also there, and Hulami is glad they got out safely. Filmina wonders why Kelroy helped out when there was no money involved. Kelroy says he's just a nice guy, but Filmina knows he is trying to gain a favor from Boxo, and Kelroy says they will achieve their dream by any means necessary. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.